This is Gemara in Kiddushin, Daf Ayin Dalin, and all the learning for today should bring an incredible schos refuah shlema for Batsheva Basirul Bracha, B'siyata Dishmaya, a young girl that is in need of Rachmei Shemayim. The incredible schos HaTaira should bring Batsheva Basirul Bracha a complete refuah shlema, as well as the learning should bring protection. And Yeshua is Aryam Nachem Moshe ben Dina Toiva. And finally, looking forward, Sunday night, it seems like it should be an absolutely beautiful event at Bellworks. I see him on half of Shas. I see him on Seder Nashim with the Agudah.org. Looking forward, if anyone will be there, to seeing you and connecting there. And for now, we're holding 3 lines from the bottom of Ayin Gimel Amid Beis. Says the Gemara, quoting a Braisa that we had a bit above, that Ne'eman Bal HaMekach, the one who owns an item is Ne'eman to say, Loimar Lezeh Macharti, Ulazeh Ein Macharti. To this one I sold, this one I did not sell. Says more B'medvar Mamurim. When is this referring to? Bizman Shemechoi Biyadai. This is only as long as the seller, the owner of the item, has the mekach, has the merchandise in his hands. But if he does not have it in his hands, then einay ne'eman. And with that, we turn over to Ayin Daled Amud Aleph, and the Gemara asks perhaps a very simple and logical question. V'nechsi, why don't we just look? Zuzi miman nakat. Let's just see from whom the seller took money from, and that way we'll know who the buyer is. Why are we saying that we have to believe him? What do you mean? Just look who he took money now. And Rashi says, what's this havamina, this detail is predicated on seemingly that he only took money from one of them, and that he remembers, so therefore he should be believed. Says the Gemara in the top line of Ayin Dalim and Aleph, the case is that he took money from both of them. And he says, one of them I wanted to take the money, and the other one forced me to take the money. Could paint out a simple picture that he's trying to sell an item. Reuven, he was trying to sell to, and Shimon shoves the money in his hands. He doesn't remember which is which. Continues the Gemara, quoting the Braisa, Neman Adayon. Adayon is Lomer Zachisi Lezechayafti. He's Neman to say which of the litigants was obligated and which one was meritorious. Says Gemara again, but Medvar Mamurim, what is the case? Shabali Dinam Aimdim Lefanav, that they're still standing in front of him. Avalein Bali Dinam Aimdim Lefanav. Then Einay Neman. Ask the Gemara V'nechzi Zechuta Man Nakat. Why don't we just say who has the Zechuta? What is the Zechuta? Zechuta is that Bezdin writes up the Psak Din. Rezdin writes up who is Chayiv and who is not. So why don't we just check who is one holding the paper? Says the Gemara Lo Tzricha Dekare Zechutayu. That the case is that he ripped up that piece of paper. Says Marvin Adar Daninu. If he ripped it up, then it's a new court case. Says the Gemara, Bishuda Dedaini, it's a case that was a judge's discretion, which is there are certain halachas that aren't clear cut, and the halacha is that the dayan has the shikul hadas, has the das Torah to decide who is right. So the concern is the first time he decided, hey, maybe if he retries the case, he'll decide V, and that's the reason why it is not so simple. Continues the Gemara on the theme of Ne'amanus, Amar Rav Nachman. 8 lines down, Ayin Dalim and Aleph, the first word line is Amar Rav Nachman. Shloisha, the 3 people that are Ne'amanim, Allah Bachar. 3 are Ne'aman to establish which child is the firstborn. Of course, there are many halachas that are relevant for Bachar, most notably Nachala, that the Bachar gets, Pishnaim gets double, Eluhain, who are the 3 people, Chaya, the midwife, Aviv, Ima, the father and mother. Chaya, La'al, the midwife is only believed right away. Ima is believed Kol Sheva, all 7 days, and Aviv Li'olam, a father is always believed. Kedetanya quotes the Gemara Braisa sourcing, proving this Gemara, Kedetanya Yakir Yakirenu. La'acherim. Yakir, says the pasuk. He recognizes Yakirenu la'acherim. This means he can identify him for someone else. Mikadam Rav Yehuda Ne'eman Adam Leimar. One is believed to say, Zeh b'ni bechar. This is my firstborn son. Corroborating the din that we just said. Continues the Gemara at the two dots, about 15 lines, Ayin Daled Amud Aleph, quoting the Mishnah that Abba Shaul would have a different name before the Shtuki. Abba Shaul, Hayakarian Shtuki, what? A Baduki. He would call the Shtuki a Baduki. Says the Gemara, my Baduki. What does he mean by Baduki? If he means they check the mother of Aimeres. And she says, the Kashnev Alti, I was together with someone who was kosher. Ne'emanis. And what is Abba Shaul teaching us? That she has a credibility to say such a din. Kiman, who does that go with? Rav Gamliel. Titania, as you learned in a Braysa Chadazimna of Rav Gamliel that we taught one time. Titinan, as we learned in a Mishnah. If a woman is pregnant, v'amru la, and they ask the woman, Mati, what is the nature of the uber? What is the nature of the fetus? She says that the fetus is from a certain person who is a kayin. Rav Gamliel, Rav Elazar, Aimrim. Says Rav Gamliel and Rav Eliezer, Ne'emene, she is believed. Rav Yeshua Aimer, no, Lami Pianu Chayim, she is not believed. I'm Rav Yudam Shmuel, Halacha ki Rav Gamliel. So I asked the Gemara, why would you have to teach this din? We already learned the din that we paskin like Rav Gamliel. Explains the Gemara, even though we already learned that the halacha is Rav Gamliel, we still need our Mishnah. Why? Chado lahachshir. One din of Rav Gamliel is to say that she's kosher to a kayit. And the other din that we're learning right now is to say that the daughter is kosher. Asks the Gemara, this works according to Mandamar that says this works according to the Mandamar that says that according to Rav Gamliel, she is kosher, but the Bitai, the daughter, is not kosher. So now we have a Mishnah saying that even the daughter is kosher. That according to Rav Gamliel, if she is kosher, the daughter is kosher. Abba Shaul, what is Abba Shaul teaching us? We already learned this halacha that according to Rav Gamliel, it's the same din. Answers the Gemara, Abba Shaul adifa mi Rav Gamliel. Abba Shaul goes even further than Rav Gamliel. Why? Dimi hasam in the din of Rav Gamliel, hava amina hasam the Rav Kisheir metzla. Avalecha the Rav Pesulam metzla emalai. Maybe in a case of Rav Pesulam, like our case of a shtuki, maybe you will not be believed. Sricha, therefore we need the din. Amar Rava, and says Rava, helchs like Abba Shaul, that we paskin like Abba Shaul, which is, of course, as we just explained, even more than the din of Rabban Gamliel. And with that, we continue the Mishnah, which continues on the theme of Yochsin, who is believed, who is allowed to marry into Klal Yisrael. Says the Mishnah, Kol Asurim, Lavai Bikahal, Mutter Lavai Zebazes. Almost as a direct follow-up to the previous Mishnah. The previous Mishnah dealt who is Mutter, who is Asur, to come into Klal Yisrael. Now says the Mishnah, whoever is Asur to come into Klal Yisrael, meaning any of the psulim that we have listed, mutarim lavoi zebazed, allowed to marry each other. Rav Yehuda oiser, Rav Yehuda says no. Rav Elazar Oimer, says Rav Elazar, vadayin bevadayin mutar. Says Rav Elazar, we have different categories. Those who are vadais, those are for sure possible allowed to marry each other. Vadayin b'sveikan, usveikan b'dadan, usveikan b'seikan, aser. Any level of one that is aser to marry into Klal Yisrael due to a safek, says Rabbi Eliezer, is not allowed to marry each other. What does this mean? V'elin hasveikais, shtuki asufi and kuti. So says Rabbi Eliezer, a middle ground. The Tanakama holds whoever is aser to marry into Klal Yisrael is allowed to marry each other. Rabbi Yehuda holds, no, they're not allowed to marry to each other. And Rabbi Eliezer gives a middle level. If it's a vadei basel, then they're allowed to marry each other. What's a vadei basel? A mamzer and a sin. If it's a vadei, a sveik, a safek, and a vadei, a safek, and a vadei, safek, and a safek, which is shtuki, asufi, and kuti, those, it says Rabbi Eliezer, are not allowed to marry each other. Asks the Gemara, and I apologize again for the video issues. Michael Asur and Lavai Bikal. What does the Gemara, what does the Mishnah mean? Those who are also to marry into Klal Yisrael. If it's referring to Mamzer Nesini Shtuki Vasufi. Hatanile Reisha. But we learned in the first Mishnah, on the previous Mishnah, Mamzer Nesini Shtuki Vasufi Mutar and Lavai Zeba Zeh. We already know this. So if they are the ones that are referred to in our Mishnah that are also to come to Klal Yisrael, but they're allowed to marry into each other, why would we say that we learned in the previous Mishnah of Asu? And furthermore, Rav Yehuda comes along and says, Aser. Ahai. On what case is he going? Ilim avadayin b'sveika. And if he's going on vadayin safek, hamikdan, he say for the obvious question. And the Mishnah says, vadayin b'vadayin motor. Vadayin b'sveika, sveika b'sveika aser mechlal. The obvious implication is what? That Rav Eliezer is coming along to say that those are mutter. But the obvious implication is that Rav Yehuda, who's a previous time in the Mishnah, Rav Yehuda disagrees with Rav Eliezer. Maybe you're going to suggest the way that we learned the Mishnah. Rav Yehuda, when he says Oyser, is a ger b'mamzeres. He's talking about a ger with the mamzeres. Says the Gemara, midi, 2 lines from the bottom, midi ger b'mamzeres katani. Did the Mishnah discuss Gerbim Azares? Kol Asur and Lavai Bikal Katani. It says anyone who is Asur to come into Klal Yisrael, and most notably the last Rashi Namad explains, the Ger Lav Min Asurinu. A Ger is not Asur to come into Klal Yisrael. So what is going on with the Mishnah? Explains the Gemara, Amar Rav Yehuda. Let's take a step back and understand what's going on to the Mishnah as we turn over to Ayin Dalet Amud Beis. Halchi Ka'amar, this is Pshat in the Mishnah. Kol Asur Lavai Bikal Kihuna. One little word and the whole Mishnah changes. Anyone who is allowed to marry into Kuhuna Maininu Giyaris Bechuzim Vashal Shan V'Yom Echad. Those are Mutter Lavai Zevazev, to like Rav Shimon ben Yochai, and not like the opinion of Rav Shimon ben Yochai. Mutar and Lavai Zeba Zeh, then they are allowed to marry each other. And with that, that's what's going to be the pshat in the Mishnah. The Mishnah is learning that anyone who is mutar likeuna, then, which is not a ger as we've learned is aser likeuna, is mutar lavai zeba zeh, meaning a mamzer and a nisin. And that's the case that Rav Yehuda is saying is aser. Ask the Gemara, 4 lines down, why do we say it's the case if the girl is at least 3 years old? The feeler of Shimon ben Yochai. Answers the Gemara, Tavra. If that was true, if you're going to say the Mishnah is referring to a ger above the age of 3, then it's broken at the side. What does that mean? Because then we would learn at the time only because he's 3 years old, and one day less than that, it's allowed to marry kuna, but the problem is someone who's less than 3, and is allowed to marry one to another. So because of such a mistake in learning the Mishnah, that is why, explains the Gemara, we have to learn that the Mishnah is talking about a girl that is less than 3 years old and 1 day. Asks the Gemara on this pshat of Rabbi Yehuda, Uklalu, is this a klal? Is this a rule? Techol ha'asurin lavai b'kal kohuna, anyone who's aser to marry into a kuna, like we said, a giyores, is mutar and lavai is allowed to marry a mamzer and a sin. V'harei, there are other cases that are aser to marry a kuna, amana gusha, v'chalola zaina, all of they are asur lavai b'kal kuna, they're not allowed to marry a kain, and yet V'asurin lavai zeh b'zeh, and they are aser. So that breaks the rule. It doesn't fit with the Mishnah. V'su, and another kasha, says the Gemara, about 15 lines down, Ayin Dalet Amud Beis, the first word in line is b'zeh ha-muter aser. This Mishnah seems to explain that if one is a mutter to marry into kuna, he's aser to marry a mamzer. But the kasha based on yesterday's shir, very ger, we know a ger is shemutar b'koyanes and umutar b'mamzeres. Obviously, that was a machlekes, but that's what we're coming out with. So therefore, says the Gemara, two kashas. Ella Amar Rav Nosson Bar Hoshia. Let's go back. And a new shot. This is the third attempt at explaining what's going on in the Mishnah. Or I should say a second attempt. The first attempt was just a kasha. Hachi kamar. Kol shekoyin aser lisa es bitai. Anyone that a koyin cannot marry his daughter, mind you, what is that? Gerish and nasa giyayres. U kirav Eliezer ben Yaakov. Then mutar and lava is ask the Gemara the same kasha. Klalu. Is this really a rule? The kol shekoyin aser lisa es bitai mutar es lava is. What's the kasha? Hare chalol shenasa bas Yisrael. Case of a chal that marries a bas Yisrael, the kain aser lisa bita. The kain is aser to marry his daughter, and yet breaks the rule. Vasur enami lava zebazeh. Answers the Gemara, like kasha, this is really chazar of all the shitas that we've seen. Why? Rav Distai, Ben Yehuda. Because according to the opinion of Rav Distai ben Yehuda, who holds that the daughter of a chalal is from a Yisraelis is allowed to marry a kain. Ask the Gemara, very chalal shenas a chalala, v'kayin a chalal that marries a chalala, v'kayin aser lisa bita. Daughter is not allowed to marry a kain, and yet that breaks the rule. V'su ha moter aser. What are you talking about? V'arei gersh and asabas Yisrael and v'kayin. Mutar Lisa Bita Kohen can marry the Gershon of Yisrael's daughter, and yet Mutar Lava Zebazeh. Ella Amar Rav Nachman Amar Rava Ravua. A third attempt at what's going on in the Mishnah. Hacha, you know what the Mishnah is referring to? Mamzer me'achaisai u'mamzer me'eshes ish. Ika beinayu. Says Rav Nachman in Amar Rava Ravua. Our Mishnah is referring to, meaning the Machlekes Tanakam and Rav Yehuda is the case of a mamzer that was born me'ishes ish. Mamzer me'achaisa slicha. A mamzer is born from one's sister. One more time. Let's get this right. Mamzer me'achaisa. A mamzer born from one sister. Mamzer me'ishes ish. And a mamzer born from a married person. That's going to be the difference. Tanakama savar, the Tanakama holds afilu mamzer me'achaisa nami ave mamzer. A mamzer born from one sister is as well as the din of a mamzer. Again, what's going on over here? This means Rachmana litzlan. If someone sleeps with his sister and he has a child, that child is a mamzer, but it's a little bit of a lower level because it's krisos abat and they're not chayiv herek. So it says the Tanakama that child as well as the din of a mamzer. For Rav Yehuda savar, no meishis ish have a mamzer, but me'achaisai lo have a mamzer. Ask the Gemara, what? My kamashmalan. What is the chiddush? Tanina, we've already learned a Mishnah in Yevamis that taught us Esau mamzer. Anyone who is lo yava, who is not allowed to marry into Klal Yisrael, shemanate mani oimer kol shechayavin olav kares bidei shamayim. Only if it's krisos. So it's the same machlek as in the case of a sister. V'halacha k'divrei Rav Yeshua. V'halacha k'dvarav, and that is halacha. Rav Yeshua imer kol shechayavin olav misas bezdin. Only one who is chayiv misas bezdin. So why would we learn the same halacha in our Mishnah? So therefore, Ella Amar Rava, 10 lines from the wide lines. First we learn on the line is Amar, a third or fourth, and final pshat in what's going on in the Mishnah. Says the Gemara, Ger Amoini. Ella Amar Rava. Ger Amoini Moavi Ika Beinayu. The difference between Tanakam and Rav Yehuda is Ger Amoini Umayavi. V'hachi Kamar. Kol Asur Lavai B'Kahal. Umayni, who are these people that says Lavai Kahal? Ger Amoini Moavi. They are Motu Lavai Zevazeh. Ihachi, if this is true, says the Gemara, my Rav Yehuda Iser. Why is Rav Yehuda saying it's Asr? L'maisa we just said it's Mutter. Hachi Kamar. Afal Pi Rav Yehuda Iser Ger B'Mamzeres. Hani Mili Ger. That's only a Ger de Roy. That's Hani Mili, ger. Hani Mili Ger de Roy Lavai B'Kahal. Because Amani v'lo me'avis and Ma'avi v'lo me'avis and Al Roi lo Kal Loi, they are not usher to marry a mamzer. That's going to be the final pshat in the Mishnah. Pick it up from Tana Rabbanan in the new Gemara in the next year. B'siyata Dishmaya.